Hi there. I'm here to introduce you to Office 2016, what's new with all the new features. My name is Desiree Herman. My email address is up on the screen. I'm going to go through a presentation and then I'm going to go through some practice, going through all the different applications and some of these new features. The first thing that we have is we have a new look and feel. So the updates, what they've done is continually added to the new features that you see in the application itself. If you'll notice up on the ribbon, they have different features that are up on what you can see on the ribbon. Another thing that they've done is they've updated the themes. So all the themes do have new features where you have different theme choices that you can add. There's a colorful theme, there's a white theme, and then there's a dark theme. One of the other places they've made some changes is to the Backstage or the File tab. So when you click on the File tab in the ribbon up at the top left of the interface, one of the things that they've done is they've changed the category, or they've added to the category of the share, and they've added a feature where you can send by instant message, and that's through Skype for Business. Another one of the things that they've added to, still in the Backstage, is in the File tab, the Recent menu. So when I click on Open, I get to the Recent menu. What is in the Recent menu, what they've done is they've now allowed me to see daily which documents I've worked on. Another thing that they've done is they've made the Office 365 access, so the place where I access the applications, and all of the buttons that I see, the panels, they all look the same in the Office 365 interface, or if I'm in my desktop interface. Some of the extra features that they have added to the ribbon. Up on the end of the tabs of the ribbon, what you'll see is a little light bulb. Next to the light bulb, if you click, you actually get you see your cursor. What that does is it opens up help, but it opens more than just help. It actually will allow me to look for commands that equate to whatever it is I'm typing, or look for help. Or another feature that they've added is what's called the Smart Lookup feature. The Smart Lookup feature is something that I can also trigger other ways by using a right click. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next slide that I have here, and what I've done in this application, I've right clicked on the words Office 2016, and in the right click menu I see Smart Lookup. Either way I access the Smart Lookup, it triggers the same thing, and it triggers a task pane that opens up into the Insights panel. The Insights panel opens on the right side of the screen in a task pane. And what I can do from there is I could do web searches. That's powered by Bing, so it would be a web search based on the Bing search engine. I can use the help menu from there. I can also get definitions from a dictionary, so it uses some of the other features that you might see. In the review tab, we've always had the thesaurus and those things, so we have those tools in simpler places to get to. Another thing that they've done in Outlook, they've added a feature where when I select on the arrow in the Attach File button, when I'm attaching a file to an email, what I can do is I can see my recent list, and I can see a icon that relates to the document. Again, this recent list would be from all Office applications, as well as any other applications as well. If you notice, there's pictures that are here as well, so any documents that I have worked on recently. And that's in the Outlook email. Another thing that I can do in Outlook as well is I can use a groups feature. We've always had in our contacts list the ability to create a contact group, also known as a distribution group. One of the things that we can do now is we can actually create a place where this group of people can create conversations with each other. They can also share files in one location. This is using the Office 365 interface and the cloud. Another thing that they've done is they've given us access to be able to change permissions on attachments. So when I'm attaching a file to an email, I can allow somebody or disallow somebody to edit the document. When I access these files that happen to be in the Office 365 interface, what I can do is I can connect directly to the cloud, so I can share my documents. And when we share our documents, we could just share a document with somebody so that they can access it and they can click on a link to open the file. But another feature that we also have now is when we are sharing documents, we are able to see that other people can edit the file at the same time. Once I have shared a document, and you'll see here it shows on the button that 3 people are shared in the document, and it also mentions who is editing the document at any given time. The other thing I do have is I also have the ability to see there is a task pane that's related to the share feature. So that task pane is what we saw on the previous slide where I click on Share to the Cloud. That would be using Office 365 and the OneDrive, or it could be using Team Sites and SharePoint. Some of the other applications that they've added to is they've added more functionality in the Excel application. They've added new chart types that we can use in Excel. So there's options for me to use different types of charts. If you'll see here is circled a tree map, sunburst, histogram, box and whisker, and a waterfall. So there's a lot of different types of charts that I can now create in Excel. They all still have the same theme functionality where I can make my charts into 3D and I can bevel them if I want to, but they've also added these other functionality chart pieces. Another thing that they've added is they've added more functionality into the pivot tables. So some of the pivot tables that I can create from Excel, what I have is I have extra ability to use some of the features inside. If you'll notice inside of the chart, I have extra functionality, being able to drill down further into the chart if I need to. They also have an automatic time grouping, so if I put something that does equate to a time, it would actually show me the time in my chart. Another thing that you can do now that's an added functionality in Excel is I can directly connect to a database and I can run a query directly from the Excel data tab up in the ribbon. Another thing that they've added to Excel is that we can use geopositional maps. This is extra functionality, also kind of in the charts functionality piece. This is something we've been able to do in Visio previously, or other charting applications, dashboard applications, or business intelligence applications. Now they've added the functionality into the basic Excel application. Some of the other things that they've added to is that some of the theme functionality. They've added some new presets that we can use. So there's new style options. I can add transparency to any of the text boxes or any of the shapes that I add. I can also use these functional pieces if I'm using SmartArt or any of the features that I use in my PowerPoint applications. Another feature that they have in Office now is because we have the ability to use the Office applications on tablet computers, that we could use our handwriting features inside of it. They do have an equation feature where if I write out the equation, maybe I don't know the symbols for it, it will recognize the symbols for me. The next thing that I'm going to do here before I get to the end of the presentation is I'm going to go through each of the different applications themselves. So since I'm in PowerPoint here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the PowerPoint application itself. I'm actually going to create a new blank presentation to start from. So what we have is some of the same functionality that we've seen previously, in that we have the tabs of the ribbon. There are some more functionality pieces that we have in the design themes based on the fact that they've added some of the transparency features that I mentioned. The transitions are basically the same as what was in the 2010 or 2013 application. The animations are about the same as well. The slideshow tab, some of the things that they have added in recent version upgrades is they have added more functionality to be able to save my presentation as a video or something like that. They also have in the slideshow tab a present online, and there's present for in Skype for Business or in a presentation service. Another thing that they've added, so in the review tab, they've added the start inking. Because again, I have the ability to use the tablet with my applications, they've added some of the extra functionality. In the view tab of the ribbon, basic selections that I've ever had here. And then the one thing that I did mention that they have changed is they've added a button or the little light bulb directly after the end tab of the ribbon. So if you have add-ons, you might have more tabs of the ribbon. This is what is called the Tell Me box. So what I want to know is I want to know how can I start from this slide. So based on what I type in the box, it will give me commands that I might be able to use. It'll also give me access to help, and if I click on the help, in the help feature, what I can do is I can get to the office help. Another option that we have from that same box is the smart lookup. And the smart lookup is again that added functionality that we have. So if I click on that, I can see it opens up that the insights panel. And here what I can do is I can explore, which will do a web search. And again, this is using the Bing search engine. Or I can also click on the define. If I go to the explore section, you'll see this is again Bing. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the rest of the applications themselves. So now I'm going to go into the Word application. When I open up Word, my recent list, wherever I see the recent list, I will always see it based on the days of the week. They continually add more templates. So there are always more templates that you can find in any Office application. If you'll notice over on the right hand side, this is where I'm logged in. If I'm logged in with my corporate account, then I see my picture, etc. From here I could open a document. If you'll notice, they've also brought over what are the push pins. So I can pin an item. If I click that pin right there, what it does is it will always leave that item at the top of that recent list in this application. From here I'm going to create a new blank Word document. Again, the tabs of the ribbon. One of the things that I didn't mention when I was in the PowerPoint application was the difference in the share. If you'll notice share, again I mentioned they have the send by instant message. Another option that I have here is I could also post directly to a blog. Another feature that they've added is the being able to present online. If you'll notice here, I also have the account section. This is the account that's logged in. If I click back on the arrow up at the top, this is where I get to the rest of the tabs of the ribbon. The insert tab of the ribbon, not a ton has changed up in the tab of the ribbon other than in the add-ins section. In the add-ins section, I can get to the Windows Store. I happen to have Windows 10 on this machine that I'm on right now. Based on the applications that you're using and what you might have access to, you can go to the Windows Store. There's also add-ins. If you'll notice here, there's a add-ins, and I can get to all the add-ins. One of the other features they've added is the Wikipedia feature. So they've also added the Tell Me right to the top of the ribbon there, but you can see they've also added Wikipedia. Now we also have an online video. Online video, one of the things that we have if we have the Office 365 interface is we'd also have the ability to use the video feature in Office 365, and this would directly go right out to my Office online to find that. The Design tab, again, they've added some functionality, extra functionality to the themes themselves. The Layout tab, not much has changed. The References tab, I think of as the Insert tab, being able to use Wikipedia, kind of like the References tab. And then also the Review tab. The Review tab is where we can find the spell checker, the thesaurus, etc. Notice that also in the Review tab I can also get to Smart Lookup. So there's multiple different ways that I can access Smart Lookup. One of the other things that I did mention in the slide presentation is if I select words in my right-click menu, I can also get to the Smart Lookup. And when I click on Smart Lookup, it will always open up the panel over on the right-hand side, and it will give me both the option to explore it and the definition feature. In the View tab of the ribbon here in Word, not much has changed. One of the things that I did mention is there is the ability to share now. So in all of your 2016 applications, you will see the share feature. Depending on whether or not you have an Office login, so Office 365 login, then you could share. And when I share, I open that sharing panel. When I save it out to the cloud, it will save my document, and it's going out to, by default, my personal drive. There could also be other web locations. My other web locations happen to be SharePoint sites. Alright, some of the other changes in the other applications. So I'm going to go into Excel. And in Excel, actually on the File tab still, if I go to New, there are a lot of new templates that you can use in Excel as well. One of the things to remember is that they've added that new chart functionality too. Some of the things that I've seen in these templates, like the My Cash Flow, Stock Analysis, My Calendar, they'll actually really show you those features of the new charts if you don't know how you might use them. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the new blank workbook. So if I click on blank workbook there, some of the things that they've added as far as functionality in the Insert tab in the ribbon, they do now have smart functionality. When I insert pivot tables, one of the things they'll do is they'll give me an option of recommended pivot tables. So based on the data that I have selected, it will give me an option to look at different types of pivot tables that it would recommend. In the add-ins section, you'll see the stores here, the add-ins, also the Bing Maps, and there's also a people graph. So there's a lot of extra functionality that they've given us in all of these applications. They've also given us the recommended charts, so based on the numbers that I've created, so what I've selected, if I click on recommended charts, it'll give me a good idea of how Excel would think that it would depict that picture well. So I do have recommended charts. If you'll notice, I also have all charts. So if I know what I want, I don't have to use the recommended charts. I can click on all charts and it'll show me all my different options. If you'll notice here, I did mention they do have those different charts called the tree map. There's one called sunburst, a histogram, the box and whisker, and then a waterfall. So there are a lot of different extra added functionality features that you can use with the charts. I did also mention in all of these applications we do have more pieces that we can add as far as the functionality of the themes and things like that. Other things they've added, the 3D map. So one of the things is that I did mention that you can get to the geographic data that you need to. So this is how I could use that if I wanted to. In the formulas tab, they haven't really added any new functions that we can use, but they have added, continually they add more basic functionality into the background of all the functions. In the data tab is one of the things that I did mention they have changed, and that's one of the things that we can do by creating the new query. And if you'll notice here, I can create the query from whatever type of database I'm using. Again, in Excel they also have that tell me box. Another piece that they've added is in the data tools section of the data tab of the ribbon. Manage the data model. This is actually going into using a tool called Power Pivot. Power Pivot is an add-on extra tool that's accessible inside of the Excel interface. One of the other things they've done is they've added the forecast section. So we've had what if analysis, we've had that, but they've added a forecast sheet. So based on looking at what's happened in these 2 quarters, I could look at a forecast sheet of maybe what should happen. You can see here I can change my options for what I want to forecast. And again, now I can give my sales team the goals that they might need to get to. If you'll notice here, they also added extra functionality where you also see an explanation of what's happened. So this is what a forecast sheet actually is going to do. It needs the data to be in a table, so it's done that for me. I'm going to close out of that. If I go back to sheet 1, you can see it actually created that forecast on a different sheet. Alright, again, any Office application you can share as well. One of the other Office applications that is very useful to remember and helpful is the Outlook. One of the things that I did mention is that we do have groups. So if you'll notice here, I have groups that I can access in Outlook. Another thing that they've added, and I'm going to go into my contacts to be able to see the contacts that I have. Please notice that I also do have Skype for Business contacts. Because I am connected to Skype for Business, they also come over into Outlook. Another thing that I did mention is where you create the contact group. Okay, so, or I'm sorry, the group itself. A contact group is one of the things I mentioned that we have always been able to create in Outlook, but now what we can do is we can create the groups. If I click on a group here, what it does is it's going to allow me to create a new group, and when I create this new group, it allows me to keep it private and specify the people that can access this, or I could create it as public. Public is going to be to everyone in my organization. So again, I can create these groups. I create them from the contacts list. Where I access them is going to be in my folders list when I'm inside of Outlook. And if you'll notice here, when I go to the accounts receivable group, this is the group itself. Then what I also have is I do have a place where I can look at group files. There's a calendar that we could use for this group. So there's a lot of extra functionality that you can see. One of the other applications that we do talk about here is we talk about the OneNote application. So because I'm opening all of the other Office applications, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, actually I'll go to New here, just so you can see a blank new notebook. This is my new notebook that I'm creating. And OneNote, one of the things I can do right off the bat is invite people to it, or I could not invite people to it directly. This would be, again, using this application in a shared interface where it will access it. We will be accessing it through the Office 365 and my OneDrive. If you'll notice here, I have a Office 2016 is the notebook I just created. This is my access to all of my other notebooks that I have. When I go to the File tab, what I can see here is I can see the sync status. So when these notebooks are here, I can also access these notebooks on my tablet, whether it be an Android or an iPad tablet or a Windows tablet. I can access these OneNote files on my phone as well if I have the OneNote application, and they do have those for all the different platforms as well. In the Home tab of the ribbon here, I have all of the options for the basic things that I can do inside of OneNote. The Insert tab, some of the things that I can do in OneNote, I can actually show a spreadsheet inside of my OneNote application if I want to. There's a screen clipping feature. The other things I can do is I can also record audio and video in OneNote. So this is one of the tools that kind of has a lot of different uses for it. So one of the things you could do with it is you could use it for all of your meetings. If I use OneNote for all of my meetings, what I can do is I can create the meeting notes for each meeting separately, and I can record things if I need to. The draw, I can draw on the page if I want to. There is a history, so I can actually see who edited what on my notebook, because we can share our notebooks with other people. In the Review tab of the ribbon, the basic things that I can do, including linked notes. So if I have other documents that I want linked into this notebook, I can do that. And then the View tab. If you'll notice in the View tab here, one of the things they show is always on the top. If I click that button, what that means is I'm seeing the tabs of the ribbon. The other thing that is a little bit different about the OneNote application itself is by default there I was actually looking at the tabs of the ribbon being minimized. There's a new button that you'll see up at the top right of your interface. I'm just going to restore this down just so you can see it a little bit better. If I look at the button that's been added right next to minimize, this is the button that allows me to manage the tabs of the ribbon, and this is in all of these applications. So if I go back into Word, you can see here I have the tabs of the ribbon. I also have the ribbon showing at this point, and then I have other options. There's auto hide the ribbon, which would mean I auto hide it. Just to note that I'm not lost, if I drag up to the top of the interface, you can see that I can actually get to that. I just had to click on it to get to it. The other option that you have is the show the tabs. This is what my OneNote interface looked like when I first got there. One of the other things that you can do is you can also trigger that by double clicking on a tab of the ribbon. I've seen people do that accidentally, so that's a helpful tip for you guys to know that there is an actual button that allows you to manage that. If you ever accidentally don't see the tabs of the ribbon, please know that you can click on that button right next to minimize and you can manage it. The show tabs and commands is the default way that most people are used to seeing the interface. Alright, so those are all the different things that I had to share with you. One specific thing that I did mention is that the access to all the applications, everything looks the same in wherever you are. So I was just in my actual desktop computer looking at the applications. This here is me going into the Office 365 interface, and in Office 365 the buttons still look exactly the same. So it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote, the different applications that I just showed you. And thank you very much for your time today.